Okay, so just to revise and give you a overview about where we started and where we are heading towards. So we started with basic Python last couple of weeks, and now we are trying to learn more things which are relevant and which you might be using, or you might be at least getting to see what's happening in the backend. So we're trying to build some sort of backend, and during the course of doing that, we will learn more uh, modules or more concepts which are repeatedly used in industries like parsing, connecting to a database, data analysis, and such things. So if we have a project, it gives us a sense of direction, and it gives us a sense of border, and also we can see how the requirement changes and how do we modify the code in such a way that how accommodating these requirements in such a way that the code doesn't drastically change. So that is one of the things that developers must be aware of. Okay, so yesterday we roughly discussed about requirements. So customer wanted news, weather, and say movie recommendation, and there is also user management for subscription and all these things. So we will just focus on news today, and and then it's similar, weather is similar to news, and then movie recommendation we will look at a database or some sort of input data that we are going to download is freely available, like IMDb, and there are other freely available sources where we can download the movie database. So we'll do that as well, and then we'll do some analysis on top of it, and based on the preferences, and we will generate some of the movie recommendation based on that. So that will also cover data science related stuff. So, okay. So, and then user management, we will learn about how do you put items into the database, how do you extract from the database, and so on. So today we will focus on news. Before that, I will just show you how the code is going to. So I'll keep the project here in September 24. This one. So there is a folder called project. So I'll place all the files related to this project under this, and uh, we will also today you can also register in GitHub and start doing what we are doing, and then we can share the code and see what's happening, and so that it's like a project. So I'll create one um repository on GitHub, Git repository, and then you can start using on top of that. I'll talk about Git tomorrow, but just create an account for now so that you get a hands-on experience about how software gets developed in a distributed fashion. Most of you are from industry, so you know, but in order to get hands-on and understand how these things work, so you'll be able to appreciate more on that. Okay, so under the project, so any project will have so some folders, right? One is the source code, another is some sort of information about the project. So generally, it is called README file, about how it's about how the source code is there and how things are connected. There can be more files under this, which can talk about design architecture, and then bug fixes, and release notes, and so on. So we'll just focus on source code and how source code gets organized in with these requirements. So we have got news, weather, and movie recommendation to get started with, and then there is also subscription management, under which there is user management. So how do we create the modules accordingly? So there is no hard and fast rule that you have to do it like this, but just for your own organization, sorry, your own code organization, you need to have a mental picture, and that mental picture should be seen through this directory structure or the module structure. So let me create, say, one folder called as news, and probably weather, and say movie rec or something like that. Movie rec. And on with other folders are, say, user management. You can change this. Probably I can change this to, say, subscription management, or probably I can create another directory called a subscription management, and then I can keep things which are related to subscription to this, and then I can connect this subscriptions or subscribe or something like that. So these are the folders, and then I can go ahead and create one file or one module under each to get started with. Say I'll create say news.py. It doesn't have to be like same as the package name or the folder name. I'll you can create anything you want. So I can say weather.py, and similarly say uh, movies, or even better is movies rec or recommendations.py or movies rec for just for now. You can change it later anyway. So user management, so users.py is enough. Subscribe or subscribe better. So this is going to be the folder structure. Now this is roughly what we discussed yesterday. So we drew boxes and we drew some arrow marks. So what are these arrow marks mean in this project? So these are typically called as interfaces at architecture level. Why it is called as interfaces at architecture level, and what it means in the code is interfaces. So what it means at code level is they are just function calls, functions. Yeah, functions which can be called. So why they're interfaces is because you can have like many functions within each of this file. So obviously a module contains a lot of functions. So say news has um, get underscore news as a function. So if I make this as an interface, what one of the ideal um, thing to do is we should not change this interface very frequently. So that is why we fix on the interfaces. That is the reason is simply because, so in a real world news, the guys who are fetching the news, writing the code to fetch news, will be team one, some team, and then probably somebody who's watching for weather and doing some weather forecasting and writing code for that would be some team two, and so on. So these guys, as I was explaining in different class in an earlier class, we understood what are the dynamics in team, because people are leaving, people are getting promoted and so on. So you need to have some document which talks about these interfaces, so that the next developer or the developer ourselves, sometimes we go on say 2 weeks leave and come back and we forget things. So we need to look at that document as a point of reference, and then we should be able to connect those points. So how does news? How do we get news? Is is what let us focus on, and let us create an interface, and then let us see how those interface gets called in different places. Okay, so when we did this, we created these folders and packages and just files and some interfaces. This we can now call as say skeletal code. skeleton code or skeletal code. So it doesn't have anything, it's just a bare minimum structure. So once we have this skeleton code, so this is important to write because generally, if there is a problem, we just start writing the code. We think about that particular small thing, and then we start writing code. So what happens is you start writing code and something changes. It's difficult to modify that to back to the bigger picture. So that is one of the things that junior developers do, or junior developers do not have that sort of vision. So if you are a product manager, you have a larger vision. At project managers have similar vision because they are in touch with product management. And then developers have lesser vision about the product. Although they attend all these meetings and etc., they have at ground level they do not have bigger visions. And then going down there to junior software engineers, they lose track of what's happening in the in at the management level. So this skeletal code needs to be written in such a way that it matches with the architecture or the design. So this is important while writing the code. So just write empty functions and empty classes or whatever you have in the design, and then keep it intact. So when you do that, it gives us confidence that okay, where this particular feature should go and how does that get called. You don't have to worry about the interfaces. So empty code plus the interfaces. Let us call this as skeleton code. So let us just define one interface for news called as get news, and similarly, we can similar interfaces, because while naming it is better to name it in a similar fashion. Let us name it as get weather. Here, let us do get movie recommendations, etc. And user management. Let us get into this later. We'll just create some rough folders. So let us clear this and then get into the code and try to write skeletal code. So here, so let me create some folders which we discussed, news, and then this under this. What was that? Weather, and let us
Movie subscription.
movie movie subscription. So subscribe is a better one, but that's fine. So we just created just these folders. These folders are actually called as packages in Python. So what does this each of this contain? Say news.py, whether it would contain weather.py. Let us just focus on these two and come back here. News.py probably may have an interface called as get news. So don't start writing the code, write in comments. So these comments help you to navigate through the code and also to structure the code before writing. So it's like writing down on a paper. So nowadays we don't write it on paper, so we can just brainstorm. Hash stands for obviously comments in Python code. So you can write something like, okay, this module gets news from various sources, and interface is get news. So let us just write get news, and currently we do not have any inputs in our uh, code right now. So we discussed what could be the input. So probably I will get news from say either I can write function like this and return say some news which could be say in a JSON format. Okay, so I'll just write news JSON. This is just for this is just a variable. So maybe I'll collect all the news in this news JSON. do some operation here, some more functions here. So maybe I'll get news from some source, say uh, REST API, some REST APIs, and this is a simple function. So right now we do not have any implementation. So let me write the functions that you write call here should be already defined. So that is how the Python interpreter knows that okay, there's a function I can call that. So you cannot define this function down below here. So get news REST API. Now in this, maybe I do not want any parameters as of now. We can change it later, but let us look at how get news from REST API or get news underscore REST API takes input as an what does it what might it take input? Probably it takes an API itself as input. It will take some API and yeah, that should be good enough now. Yeah. And then return something. Say news. Okay. So probably it's JSON. So now there is no actual implementation. You can see that. So this is just a skeletal code, and this is an interface for outside world. So who is the outside world here? Is okay. I'll come to that. So probably you have different folders, and you can call these modules in other files, and then use those things. So once you have this structure, say I'll do the same thing in for weather. Get weather. Probably get weather um from okay, I'll just write um, from API. Okay, let us go to the from API. Similar thing. So result something like that, and then result return result here. Then I'm going to define get from API. Okay, you can see that so this function name is like get weather API. So this is a little bit confusing. So is it like getting the weather API or it's getting the weather details from the API? So you can simply do this. So this is better. So now let's talk about a little bit about code conventions. Um, so I'll just use this. So you can see that all the
Digant, I just have a question there.
sure,
I'm just asking this because of yesterday I was working on something, right? For
sure,
example, in Excel, you already written formulas, right?
right,
Once you rename somewhere else, the source, let's say it could be a tab, it could be something else, column, automatically gets reflected everywhere else, wherever there is a reference to that particular
right.
this thing. Does that happen here
No.
as well, or
No,
okay?
it doesn't happen because Excel is an application built on top of. So these formulas are probably uh, text inside. They have kept this in a configuration somewhere. So when you open the Excel sheet, so you're actually opening. There could be XML in the backend. So it gets
Okay, thank
loaded.
you.
So somebody has written code to change that. So, but we are dealing with the code directly, so it doesn't happen like that. But there are tools here. For example, you can right click and do refactoring and say change all the references in one shot. So that tool is available in that's an IDE tool. So you can change the function name and things like that. But you cannot do that. Okay, so yeah, a little bit about code conventions. You can see that I have used underscores here, and then I have used some sort of if you look at this, even if you do not know coding, you get that Okay, weather get weather from API. This is like a sentence or a phrase which you can guess what's happening. So if you define a function, use this. In fact, you can write it like this as well. Get weather from API, FROM, and then API. So this is like camel case. This is underscore separated words. So in generally in Python, we stick to this convention. You can write in capital letters as well, but yeah, that uh, doesn't help the reader because once you start reading the code, you have some sort of conventions and you use it everywhere. If that convention changes, it takes a little bit, effort to get rid of that convention and get into new convention. So this is just a convention. So, and then variables, unless it's global, name it all small letters, and classes, generally it will be in a camel case. For example, if I had to write a class called weather or weather API, I'll write something like this. So now a developer can differentiate when he reads the code somewhere. If he encounters this, he comes to know that okay, this is a class somewhere and this is a function somewhere. So he doesn't have to like navigate through and things like. So that is about a little bit about convention and file names. Models are generally small cases, and if there are any classes inside this, you can do with this. Uh, and yeah, folder names are just kept like this. So avoid underscores, hyphens, etc. So there is a document where you can read about code conventions, but these are like general convention. So in fact, there are tools which uh, soon after coding, while checking in, you can also run some tools to check about these conventions. Uh, the only reason is to keep all of this in a format that is uniform across the project or across the developers, so that it's easily readable. Okay, so now we have this interfaces. So this is one interface and this is one interface. So there should be, so now we have these models, weather and news. So how does this get started? Like how do we begin? Where does the code begin from, right? So generally in somewhere there will be a main file or some place where say called as run.py or main.py. If we just call it as main.py, which is one of the conventions, you can call these functions. So imagine all this project goes in as one package to somebody else's project. So now I have started a subscription service. Probably somebody else wants to build some more things on top of it, say paid subscription service or something like that. So this project gets integrated with that finance module. So probably he wants to structure the code in a way that he wants to call some things and keep track of it, and then apply finance or apply charges or something like that. So that that is the reason this interfaces needs to be remained intact. So this, if we are calling here, I'll just call get weather, this function, and probably I will call get news. Okay. Similarly, and for movie recommendation. So at main.py, it just becomes 3 lines of code. So get news, get weather, and mm, movie recommendation. So this part of code generally doesn't um, change. So because it is a main function, you can change if you really want. But so this is like you have set it on that, and this interface doesn't change. So the reason is somebody else can call it, and if you keep changing the interface, that his code will start it will get it won't work because it will break the code. So keep the interfaces intact. So that's about interface. Let us try to get back here and try to implement, say news. So before implementing news, so let us learn how the internet works. Say, for example, I'll show you something. So now we are trying to learn about, during the course of writing the code to get news, we will learn something about internet and how the data gets transferred and how do we capture that data and so on. So let me open the news. Drag that here. So if you go to any news websites, right? Say I'll just put Hindu. So we all know that this is a browser. This is a Google Chrome browser, and I have opened this particular news channel. So what is the content? So how am I able to see this particular content, right? So if I click on, say, main page, the Hindu comes here, and then the main news and so on. How does this happen in the backend is here. So if you just open view source code, right click and see, you can see that there is a lot of code with these are JavaScript, and it does something and so on. You don't have to really study this, but just see that there is some data in the backend. It downloads the data. The browser in the backend downloads the data and it sort of beautifies here. So that's the job of the uh, browser. Download the data from some source and present it. So there are a lot of challenges in browser itself, like how do you structure the UI and how do you cache the user data and cookies, etc. Okay. So if you say you can see that there are links here. So if I click on this, it takes to movies. So these are called as hyperlinks in HTML world. So uh, and then let us also look at what else happens in the backend. There is one is view page source, which will open here, and also you can see the part of the code that I have downloaded. What are what are those? So that is right click and inspect element. So if you want to say, I'll just keep it here. If you want to, you know, I'll just maximize this. Lot of ads. So you can see that there are several elements. So as I uh, go on this, it should highlight. Yes, so you can see that the code is constantly changing here, in the elements and etc. So let me just open a simple uh, one here, because that's a lot of ads are popping up. So generally, we saw that there is some code which gets downloaded. So Wikipedia doesn't have ads. That's why I have taken this just to show you what happens in the back. So this is the source code actually it has downloaded. This is HTML. You can see that there is HTML and there is HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which is the you know carrier, just like XML. So the markup language, why do we call it as markup languages is quite simple. So you can see that there are these sort of enclosures. Uh, we are familiar with this because we looked at some XML before. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is extended markup language. So in HTML, all this little um, keyword like things which are enclosed in this greater than and lesser than symbols, they are like keywords. Those are fixed. So that is why it's like a language. It's not a language. So it's like a language. It's just to help the browser how to structure the what is inside what. And XML is something where you can create your own tags. They are not fixed. For example, if I'm making any configuration for say mouse, I can say with the after header, and I can say mouse properties, and then I can list out all the properties of mouse. So that is why it's called as extended markup language. So within this, there are links. So it is called as HREF and so on. So we don't have to like dive deep into this, but just understand that there is a file in the backend and it gets downloaded and it gets formatted like this. So in the here, for example, so if I just scroll over something, so it will show the corresponding code here. Okay. So that is how it helps the inspect uh, things, help us to find out where is what. Okay, this is helpful for UI developers especially, but you can also see that if you want to look at what is coming as JSON data and things like that, you can also go to network and you can look at some JSON. I'll refresh it. Um, so, yes, all it could be embedded somewhere, but yeah, you can find out some. This is HTML. This is something which these are images and so on. So you can see these icons. Okay, but yeah, there are uh, different types of data that gets downloaded. So when we talk about say JSONs and REST APIs. So how it is different from the HTML? So HTML is generally for people who are browsing, right? So and then what if you have your own server and you don't want UI and probably there is server to server communication and there is something happening within the computers. Probably you can also embed the JSON data here and then send it over here. So let us try to understand what are these, how does these things came into picture so that you have context and then understand how the internet works and we can write the program and use it as a um, reference to understand how these things work. Okay. So now we are trying to scrape news, but before that we are trying to understand how the internet uh, has works. So one of the things is we saw that in the browser we saw HTML and things like that. So where does this code or the browser get the data? So the one who is getting the data is called as client, and one who is serving the data is called as server. Okay, so we have learned in previous sessions that you can we learned about files, right? So it goes on the hard disk, and in order to get the file, you do something like fd.read or open and read lines and so on. So similarly, we are fetching the data from peripheral device. So network can, how do I fetch data from different computers? So one is your IP address and the URL, those things. So every machine has an IP address, and then there is you can also um, get an URL. So why is it called as URL? It's because universal resource locator. So it means that on a machine, I have some data somewhere. It could be a file, it could be a database, it could be an image, whatever, and it could be part of the database. So which is usually the case. DB and some part of the data. For example, if I have a table of users, if I don't want entire database thing, right? So I just want my if I want to log in, I just want my user details to be downloaded and verified. So some part of the DB. So how does it work? Is we send a request, a client sends a request to server, and server responds. So how does all these things work is because there are people who are working to get this standardized using protocols. So one of the at base level, all of these are bits, right? And then on top of it, somebody has built um, some hardware for that. So which is NIC card, NIC card. On top of this NIC, um, there are protocols which are like IP protocols, TCP protocols, and so on. So such protocol is building up on base level of these bits. So if you're working on this level, NIC or bits level, you could be called as like L1 engineer, and this is how your L1, L2 comes into picture. Okay, so at on top of this TCP, there is a protocol called as HTTP. So this is the protocol which helps the internet work. So what does HTTP contain? So just like this function calls. So if in order to call this function, I will call this function in the same process, right? So now this is an inter-process communication over the network. So there should be some. You can write your own protocols, but how do you have, control this, or how do you standardize this so that everybody can be using it? So that is one of the main idea behind the HTTP. So this is a protocol, hypertext, not hypertext, probably some protocol, hypertext transfer protocol, I think. Yeah. So HTTP is the like protocol, and this has some sort of um, uh, calls or functions. So which is nothing but get, put, etc., patch, and delete. So where are these commands coming from, and how do we issue that, right? So if you go to this, whatever we saw, I'll just close this. You can see here in the headers, you can see that this is the request URL. You can see that there is a request method here, get. So this is how the headers look like in HTTP. So HTTP has some headers, and there is request headers, and then there is authentication information. There is user agent, which is yeah, additional information. But the main thing is you should understand that this is a method which is called as get. You remember we also call functions as methods. This is a function, but this is sort of a remote function. So when I say get, what should it get? So this is what it should get, request URL. This is the place that it goes. So this particular common sort Wikimedia, there is something. This is the computer name, which gets translated to IP address or the DNS network, DNS, and then there is some code here, and it exactly. So once this code gets triggered with these parameters, these are actually parameters. The source code, which is like, if I am a programmer, I might have written a Python program to take these parameters and serve that particular, based on these parameters, serve this particular um, data to the client. So that is how it works. So so if you want to update something, for example, if you're registering something, it is most probably put, or if you're modifying something, it is patch. So that is the link between your function calls, and now we are making function calls between the computers. So this is what it is. Okay. So and also this is in direct translation with database as well. So if you have a database, so a little bit about database, uh, you have data in tabular format, right? So you might be having many tables, but let's think that there is just one table. You can just like in Excel sheet. So what are the operations that you can do? There are only few operations, right? Probably 4 operations. You either read the data, or you can write the data into that. So write has two more stuff. One is you can write fresh. Another is you can update. So this fresh writing is called as put, because you're adding some entry. This updating something which is already existing in an Excel sheet. So just think that there is Excel sheet which we can just think as a database as of now. So um, this is batch. Update is batch. And also you can also right click and delete an entry in Excel sheet, right? Similarly, you can do something similar in database using SQL commands if it is an SQL database. So deletion. So these are the only four operations that you do. Okay. So even on the notebook, it's the same thing. So read, write, and destroy. So you can see that this is actually translated to this HTTP methods as well. These are the main four methods. There are different other methods as well, but it's like to get headers and stuff like that. But those are additional optional things. So now we know there is a function call. Function call within the server, and then that function call will get triggered based on this. So if I make a get, probably I have written code that if I get this particular uh, request, I will probably say get news. Okay, I will invoke that. So I will parse that HTTP request information and give that. Okay, so that is how the backend and this HTTP is connected. So now let us now we have learned about how brief about HTTP thing, and also all of this has got a response codes as well. Those are called status codes. Status code. So you can read about status code later. You can see here. For example, a request method is get. So what is the response? You can click on get rid of that. You can see the response. This is the response. So you can see request headers. I think the response headers is here. So we send some request with get. You can see that there are uh, server timings. I think there is where is the status? Let me look at some other age. Okay, I cannot find it. There should be some. Okay, there should be some status codes. Okay, we will. Oh, here it is. Okay, it's here. Here, status code. Okay. I was looking here. Okay, it comes in general headers, but this is just a browser is trying to segregate data. So, but if you are doing at code level, you'll get it immediately. Okay, so you can see that I sent this method, which is like a function call. You can think of it as a remote function call, and this is the resource that I want to fetch data from. You don't have to remember this because it's like hyperlink to the page, and you can keep on clicking, and it will send these things in the backend. And once it goes and a server says, okay, I have served you, it will send the status code. So there are several status code. One of them, if everything is okay, it's like 200. If you do not have, for example, so if you do not have access, probably it will say 401. And if that page is not there, it will say 404. That is why you sometimes get that 404 error. So there are several of them. 201 is one more, and there are series like 200 series are for this, and 400 series are for um, some resource and authentication things like that. So those are part of the HTTP protocol. So just get familiar with that. So now we saw the structure of how the data looks like, and how now we understood the structure of the data. We can understand that we can parse it, because you cannot parse entire page, and within that we need to narrow down and then finding out things. So now we have learned about HTTP. We will learn little bit about REST APIs as well. So what is REST API is same as this. So this is one more sort of this is not a protocol. This is more like an architecture. So you can read about REST architecture. It has same thing. So similar stuff like get put and all these things. On top of that, you will get response in JSON format, and you can request the resource and so uh, get the response. So here you won't find any XMLs and unnecessary things which makes you to think harder to parse it, like images and all these things. Of course, you can send those, but yeah, REST APIs are designed to help process to process communication across the network. So where are these used? So in fact, you can embed these REST responses inside those HTML, uh, and people can parse that. So this is easily parsable because it has a structure, proper structure, which is like dictionary inside dictionary and so on, right? So in fact, HTML also has a structure, but it is meant for like end users, like people who are browsing and things like that. So in how does process to process communication um, can make use of this REST APIs or like this? So imagine this particular model. So currently everything is on one machine. So this particular module is I will it is possible that my app sort of grows into a close out say 10 million users or say million users. So then I cannot run everything in one server, right? So I need to keep code in such a way that this code gets um, distributed over the network. So probably the caller, the main .py, or somebody who is aggregating news, or somebody who is calling main.py. So this may be in some other server, say P3. So these are the servers where now I have uh, like news is running on here, weather is running here, and so these are actually now in a new architecture from past decade. These are called as now microservices. So Amazon, so when you log into Amazon, so Amazon is like one of the companies which uses this microservices heavily. So if you log in and authenticate, they may be having a microservice called as authentication or user management. And and when you click on orders, probably that you are fetching, going and fetching all the details from orders microservices and putting it here in your uh, other process, which is trying to fetch. So how is this possible? Because there is no human involved, right? Nobody is looking at the data, and final only the final guy or whoever has logged into Amazon is looking and getting the data, but he doesn't know there are multiple servers, and the data that you are getting is from multiple places. So that is where this REST API comes into picture, and it says that okay, this is how you need to communicate, and this is the format, and now you can parse the data in such a way that you can do whatever with. So it is called REST because it's stateless. So state and stateless is generally if you have a server, states means it remembers what client's state is. For example, if I am downloading a file from a server, if it keeps track of like okay, Digant is downloading the file, this is the user, some this one, and this is the progress of that file downloading, probably 10% is getting downloaded or something like that. So if it keeps the state, that is like it has some information about the client, so that is like state of that particular transaction. So stateless is it doesn't keep any of this because it's overhead, right? Imagine million people are getting onto the server, and it has to track. It is unnecessary burden on the server. So such things, such servers are called as stateless servers. So it doesn't remember that. For example, if you click on download button, and if you click again on the download button, so you'll download twice, right? So both of them will keep downloading at the same time. So that is the reason. The reason that happens is because server doesn't know you have already downloaded it, unless you want that code to be in server, right? So yeah, so that is about gist of server stateless and stateful. But yeah, it's a different topic. Yeah. So this is about uh, REST and HTML. So these are the ways that internet communicates within each other. So now let us try to look at ways. How do I get news? So this is now the implementation part. So if I how do I get news from REST API? So I was researching yesterday, and then there are some news API server providers. So I'll show you that. So this is one of them, news API. This is a free service until there is a limit, but yeah, you can use. So let me just get rid of this. Let us
Deegan, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
I have to join another call in another 4 minutes.
okay,
But however, I don't want to miss this.
sure.
Um, um, so this will be recorded, right? I can watch
Yeah,
it
yeah,
later,
of course,
even
it's
if you come.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so okay, now we are trying to access some resource which is using this protocols. That is the reason you type in HTTPS. S stands for secured. HTTP is a protocol, and you're trying to access some resource in this particular computer, which is actually an IP address, but we don't have to remember the IP address. The DNS server will remember that. So this is a URL. And then these are the parameters. So depending on these parameters, somebody will serve you the data. So this is how the JSON response looks like. So now if I simply say copy this, okay, it's quite big. Let me see if there is any smaller one. Okay, even this is big. Okay, now you can see that. Okay, so these are all dictionaries, right? So if you remember, this is JSON, and if we load this string or this file into the JSON library, you will get a dictionary. So now you can find out, say, you can take that particular data and say, I can collect these each of these small parts of dictionary, say source, and if I want them, I can put it into a tabular structure, which means I am getting data from somewhere, uh, JSON data to a tabular structure. So I can make, say, a table which has source as one of the columns, and say some ID or author, whatever I need, and title and so on, and keep it. This is just for probably tracking purpose. I do not know yet, but this is how you parse the data and keep that thing in database. Okay, so this is about JSON, and in next class we will try to uh, parse this and do something on top of it, because we want to collect the news, right? So we saw some API which serves that, which is news API.r. In fact, you can we can also write another function here in get news from, instead of REST API, we can also level up our requirement, saying that get news from say Times of India, get news, or get news from, say, uh, websites. Instead of REST API, I can do some websites. So input could be the URL news agency, and probably news agency name and news agency URL, something like that. So we can decide that. So now we have two functions to deal with. So you can actually parse HTML using a library called as Beautiful Soup. We will learn that Beautiful Soup is a library. So we don't have to reinvent this. We don't have to like import XML module and start writing it, because these are the patterns which are already there. So parsing of this HTML or XML, this sort of thing is called as web scraping. So that is where you might have heard. So there are a lot of things. For example, ChatGPT has scraped all the internet, right? So it has scraped all the websites in the world. So you can imagine how big it is. So it's called web scraping. For example, there are websites which aggregate jobs in one place, right? So there is nobody who is taking all the jobs and typing it in a sheet and then serving it, right? Nobody is updating the database. So somebody is doing that. They do it via code. So such things are called as web scraping. For example, if I'm a business owner, I want to find out my, say, B2B business owner. Say if I'm selling laptops, so I want to find out all the companies who are in need of computers. So probably I write code to find out list on all my competitors, go to their website, get their contact details and their email addresses from that page, and probably I will write an email which is also automated and send it. So these are the common use cases of web scraping. In fact, Google does web scraping constantly. That is why we get these results. So if we just go to Google and type something, you'll get a lot of results, right? So that is a brief about web scraping. So somebody is always doing. So we will learn these things in coming session. We will learn how to do the REST API calls and deal with JSONs using a certain library. It's called request library, and another is beautiful soup. And then yeah, we will learn tomorrow about those two things. And the next classes we'll learn about database connections and so on. Yeah, that's it for today. So that is at code level, you can see that we have just written few lines of code, but we have, in order to write this code, you need the context. In order to have context, you need to understand the history and how things work, right? So this is just a brief thing. Okay, so once now you know that this is how things work, it is easy to write code and understand how the navigation is pretty easy now. Okay, so yeah, that's it for today's class. Yeah, we will do more things in the next class. Okay, thank you for attending. Any questions, please ask.